not doing. But when we talk about our rights, it kind of feels good because now we're going to talk about what we're not getting and what we should be getting. So it's kind of a greedy thing to want to talk about your rights and kind of ignore your responsibilities. So you'll find often that a husband might talk about the rights of the husband to the wife, but never talk about the responsibilities of a husband to the wife. And the wife will talk about the responsibilities of the husband, but never the responsibilities of the wife. So every party wants to talk about what benefits them, but not what will benefit the other or what is owed to the other. And unfortunately, we bring that mentality, that selfishness, to Islam. So then we take from Islam, from the Quran, from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, quotes, statements, anecdotes, wisdoms, guidance that furthers our rights. So a parent, a mother, a father will be very quick to quote things from the Quran about the rights of parents, right? Or a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and things like that. And even though those texts are there, and they're there for a reason, but they're not there so that you feel more empowered, or you get to tell another human being, even your own child, this is in the Quran, you need to do this. That's not what that was there for. That was actually there for the parent to remember that they have a parent. You see, the Quran is not there to tell you, its primary objective is not to tell you, here's how you take this and stick it in somebody's face and make them feel bad and make them do what you want them to do. That's not the goal of Allah's book. We need to approach Allah's book with more humility. The goal of Allah's book is for all of us to actually first and foremost remember our own responsibility. So, and I'm not taking this as a dig on parents. We honor our parents and Allah Azza wa Jalla has honored them. But a tendency that we have, anything we do in Islam, we tend to take things from the text that further our benefit, and we can use it to snub somebody else, put somebody else down. And that is an unhealthy, it's a sick approach to the sacred. It's not a good thing to do. And to me, it's even borderline disrespectful to the sacred word of Allah and the teachings of our Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's just something that, inshallah, I hope to present in a somewhat balanced way. Now, I feel like I'm in a position of maybe being a little bit balanced because I myself am a parent, and I have my parents, alhamdulillah, may Allah protect them and preserve them, so that I kind of now see more of both sides. I mean, I gave a talk about parenting before I had a kid. So it's different. Your perspective changes. And now I have teenagers. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So, it's different now. In any case, moving on to Surah Al-Asr, these introductory observations. The first of them I shared with you as we were leaving the session yesterday. And that was that, I talked to you about how this surah represents, one way of looking at this surah is that it represents the minimal criteria of not being a failure. The surah's subject is not success, it's actually avoiding failure. Right? And it's presenting the bottom line. And the way I gave you that analogy was, well, it's not talking about getting an A, it's just saying how do you avoid an F? How do you get away from getting an F? Right? So that's the first observation. And the second that's coupled with it is that because it presents a very different standard from everything else, and I alluded to that yesterday, right? That in this life, everybody else follows a certain standard for what it means to be successful and what it means to be a failure. But this surah, gain and loss, have now been redefined entirely. And I wanted to highlight that a little bit more by way of an analogy. And it's an analogy inspired by the Quran itself. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. That worldly life is nothing but play, entertainment, and a game. In a game, there's pretend, right? Like kids are playing a game, and one kid is going to be the soldier, and one kid's going to be the king, or whatever else. It's a silly story, but I'm reminded, my parents put me in a play when I used to live in Saudi in elementary school, and I got to be the king. So I'm sitting on the throne, and this other kid, his job is to be the servant. This is my friend, his job is to be the servant. So he's going to bring this tray, and he's going to serve me orange juice. And halfway through, he's just threw the thing, and I want to be the king in the play. So I sat him in my chair, and the play was over. But the point I'm making is when you're playing around, when you're playing pretend, then you take on roles, right? But that's not really who you are. In a movie, somebody can be a superhero, or somebody could be, a ruler, a police officer, a criminal, whatever else, but that's not who they really are. When that play is over, then those costumes are off, the fake stuff is off, and who you are. This is actually, in a sense, the game of life too. we have certain roles. People think of us a certain way. They have a certain image of us, right? This person is very dignified, very noble, very famous, high ranking. Even within the Muslim community, somebody could be thought of as in very high terms, and that's okay. But it may not be the case on Judgment Day. And there may be somebody who's just completely insignificant, unknown. Nobody knows who they are. There's somebody just, sweeps the masjid floor, or somebody who's quiet and doesn't socialize with anybody, and they're the celebrity on Judgment Day. They have mountains of good deeds behind them. And it could be people like that. There is allusion to that even in some of the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, where he would sometimes allude to a companion and say, this person guaranteed Jannah. This person, if you could be like him. And they're like, who? And he'd point to somebody and they'd be like, him? We don't even know who he is. What does he do? I've never heard him speak. He's never done anything major in public or nothing. What's so great about him? So this, to internalize that the standards that people judge by are not the standards Allah judges by in Surah Al-Asr. And it's one dimension of that, to talk about that is easy. The disbeliever has material gain, cars, homes and money and all of these things and pleasures and all of this stuff. And that's what they see as success. And the believer sees success differently. That one's obvious. Now obviously that is not to us success. The Fir'aun had the biggest crib in history. He had the nicest home in history, and he's the ultimate failure. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was literally homeless. He was expelled from his home, and he's one of the greatest successes in human history. Our religion is named after him, Millata Abikum Ibrahim. Right? So we don't judge by that success, but let's talk within the Muslim community. Forget even within the Muslim community, within the religious or supposedly religious Muslim community. We take certain appearances, certain status, certain level of knowledge or demonstration of certain level of knowledge as a consideration that someone is more successful. Like, so for instance, in many Muslim cultures, if somebody is, somebody's got a beard, or the longer the beard, the more religious they are, the closer to Allah they must be. The more traditional clothes they're wearing, the more religious, the more closer to Allah they must be. If they're wearing a t-shirt, then astaghfirullah al-azim, but if they're wearing a thobe, alhamdulillah, mashallah, subhanallah, etc., etc. So clothing makes an impression. As a matter of fact, we size people up when they walk into the masjid. The way they're dressed, the way their face looks. You can tell this is a person of taqwa. And this is a person of I don't know what. I don't even know why they're in the masjid. Right? So we don't do this verbatim. This goes on in our head. So in the religious sense also, we consider some people successful and some people failures. We do that. And we have to undo that too. People have come up to me sometimes and said, I don't even know Arabic and I just feel so bad. Like, so what, you don't know Arabic? You're working 20 hours a day providing for your family. You don't have time to study. Allah is not thinking any less of you because you don't know and you don't have the opportunity. Allah gave you a certain, set of challenges in your life that He didn't give me or somebody else. He's not going to judge you by my standards. But what we do always is we compare ourselves to others and put ourselves down or up compared to others. Yes, you can take inspiration from others, but don't pass false judgment on yourself in comparison to others. Every one of us has our own mawazeen, if you remember I mentioned that. Everyone has our own standards, our own challenges, our own struggles, and what this surah is giving us is really a look in the mirror. The clearest we have to be is not in comparison with somebody else, but really with ourselves. بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Right? So that's something that every other standard is a mirage. Even if somebody memorizes the Qur'an or can recite in perfect tajweed, or people look up to them as a teacher or a scholar or famous or whatever else, none of those things may be a criteria for success to Allah. For Allah, the success criteria are the criteria mentioned in this surah. If those things were utilized properly to further these goals, the ones mentioned in the surah, then fine. If those things didn't help with any of this stuff, then those things are pointless. They carried no weight, even if they were in appearance religious, in appearance. But even let's talk about material things. Everything Allah says, without these items, these 4 items that I haven't yet talked about that are in this surah, I briefly translated them. Without these minimal criteria, you're in loss. What that means is, unless you put these glasses on, these 4 lenses on, and see life through these 4 lenses, if you take them off, no matter what you gain, no matter what you achieve and I achieve, all of it is either a mirage, which means it was worth nothing in the end, or, worst case, we were even running what we thought was after our success, and it was our own destruction. Either it was worthless, or it was our own death and our own destruction. Those are the only 2 possibilities. لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا وَوَجَدَ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ فَوَفَّاهُ حِسَابًا. It's a mirage. That's what we're running after. These ayat, and the conclusion of this surah, is actually there to open our eyes and to show us everything else. By the way, I'm not saying you can't get a nice house, or can't live a good life, or can't get a good job, or can't dress well. All of those things are fine. Those things are only fine after this is there. When this isn't there, then all of that stuff is meaningless. Allah doesn't want us to be miserable in this world. He doesn't. He doesn't want us to, even though He created us in toil and labor, He did put many things in this world for the purpose of our own benefit. وَجَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا مَعَايِشْ. Right? He put in this world many things for you to enjoy, to live well. He put those there for us. But those things are only a blessing when we have the right mindset, when we have the right approach to life, when we take on the right lifestyle. And after that, those things become a blessing, otherwise they become a curse. Okay, so that's the discussion about standard in life. And by the way, this is not something you can convince somebody of on your own. Even within your family, if you decide that what you learn from Surah Al-Asr becomes the way you want to live your life, right? Because that's really what this is. A change in lifestyle is what this surah is calling for. If your perspective has changed, that does not necessarily mean people around you, their perspective has also changed. And the surah itself acknowledges that. As we will see, the surah actually acknowledges that you may have experienced a change and you may get on this journey, but there are going to be people around you that are actually going to resist you in this journey, even though they love you and you love them. So it's not just resistance coming from the enemies of Allah. There will be close friends, family, people that you are bonded with forever, and they're not evil people, and you'll continue to love them and they'll continue to love you, but they're not convinced of this journey. That's just not going to happen. Or they're not convinced of it yet. And you can't get frustrated with them. Even if they get frustrated with you. That's going to be necessarily a part of your journey. And that's a criteria for your success to begin with. Another ayah that I wanted to make a quick reference to, just when it comes to this standard, and people following the false standard. قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Should we inform you of those who are the worst of all losers, the worst of all when it comes to suffering loss? أخسرين. And that in everything that they've done, أعمالا. You see, those of you that are familiar with some nahu, أعمالا is supposed to be mumayyiz here. يعني it's supposed to be الأخسرين عملا. عملا. The mumayyiz, the distinguisher, is singular. It's nakira and singular. And Allah Azza wa Jal deliberately breaks the rule of grammar, breaks it because He owns it, and uses the plural to illustrate no matter what it is they do, they're losers. No matter what they've done, they're losers. And they're the worst of all losers. Who are these people? الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. Those whose efforts have been wasted away. Their efforts are wasted away in some worldly material stuff, lowly life. And all the while they assume they've excelled in putting something amazing together. They've put something grand together. These false standards people give their lives to. They give their lives to them. There are people that will, I give this example so many years ago, it still holds true. There are people they're worth millions, if not billions. And they're so old, and they're bedridden, and they're about to die, and when their mortality finally hits them, they're like, well, at least put a statue in my name or a foundation. Now give this stuff to charity. So if I die, at least my name will be there on a plaque somewhere. Right? That's how my name's going to carry on. Does that make them a winner? The fact that, we admire, people go from all over the world, tourism to Egypt, and they look at the pyramids and look at these ancient monuments and all this stuff. And we awe at them, but that awe and those picture takings and, aggrandizing that ancient civilization, what does it benefit them anymore? What are they getting out of it? They've lost. Even if we think they were awesome, they've lost already. And they don't appreciate our appreciation. They get nothing from it, you know. It's a false thing, you know, a false perception to think my name will carry on, I'll be known as a legend, and that's going to do something for me. This is something the Arabs had also. They wanted to die gloriously in battle so that people will remember them as a brave warrior. You're dead already. What is that going to do for you? You're following the false standard. Now the second thing that I wanted to, an overarching theme that I wanted to mention about this surah, is that there are three main ways, eventually maybe even four, but there are three main ways of looking at the wording of this surah. Okay, there are three ways of views. The one of them is what I've already explained to you. This is the minimal criteria for success in the afterlife. Meaning, however people are judged while this play is going on, while the movie is happening, people are different roles as different actors, but the reality of who they are on Judgment Day, right? So this is describing the minimal criteria for how to avoid failure on Judgment Day. That's one. But there's another way of looking at the entire text of the surah. And that is that this is Allah's commentary on human history. When He says Wal-Asr, and He swears by time as it passes away, or it has passed away, and when He says human beings are drowning in loss, and then He says that with the exception of those who've believed, notice the past tense, those who've believed, He's basically making a comment about history, human history. And He's saying, all these countless people all over the planet, since Adam alayhi salam until now that have died, all of them lost, all of them failed. And the only ones among them that didn't fail are the ones who believed and the ones who did good deeds. Those are the only ones. Everybody else, and those people, their names may not be in history books. Nobody might know who they are. Some of them might even be buried under our feet right now. We wouldn't know. But Allah knows that they're the ones that didn't fail. And there are those who are now the pillars of human civilization. We read about them, we learn about their successes and their accomplishments, and they're the figures of history, and they may not be successes at all, because they didn't meet this criteria. So this may be Allah's way of commenting on the tragedy of human history, that we've looked at history with the wrong standard of success and failure. This is why the Quran is highlighting people in it, the prophets and the righteous. Sometimes Allah even mentions the righteous people whose names are not known. We don't even know their name, but Allah speaks highly of them. You know, who is this? Who is Dhul Qarnayn even? Like, there's a mystery of who this person is, and who this individual is. Who's the friend of Musa alayhi salam in the court of the Pharaoh? We don't know his name. You know, so there are examples in the Quran of people whose names aren't even known. Now, who's this gardener that spoke to his friend in Surah Al-Kahf? You know, he's honored until Judgment Day, but we don't know his name. You know. But then there are people that we know who they are. Their names are known throughout history, and yet they are failures. So this is Allah's commentary on all of history. We'll dig into that when we get into the surah itself, but I wanted to give you the overarching possibilities. The third is actually that this is maybe a scene of Judgment Day. That on Judgment Day, Allah will bring time itself as a witness, because whenever you take an oath by something, that whatever you took an oath by, the muqsam bihi, is actually being called as a witness. So time will be called as a witness to testify something. And what will it testify? That when it looks back at all of what happened in this life, all that transpired in the saga of humanity, it's going to be able to say, Innal insana lafi khusr. That's the truth that it testifies to. And the only exception to that, which will be proven on Judgment Day, is الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That this is, in a sense, a depiction of what's going to transpire on Judgment Day. That's a third way of looking at it. There's maybe a corollary, a fourth way of looking at the overall text also. I'll mention that to you now. And that is that you have this idea that people who do good, or people who believe and do good, they don't keep it to themselves, they pass it on. They teach their children, who then teach their children, and good spreads. They die, their inheritance, their home got taken away, their property is gone, their name is gone, their grave's not even marked anymore. But the good deed that they did was passed on, and from there it was passed on to somebody else, and from there it was passed on to somebody else. So their gains continued even though all of their material gains died. Compare that to others who had way more than they ever did. Fame, money, power, property, you name it, they had it. But now that they're gone, they're in loss. There's nothing they can gain anymore. But with exception to that, those who actually throughout history believed and did good and encouraged others and counseled others to the truth and to be persevering, those people may continue to be gaining even now. And they're the only ones that are dead and gone and not in loss still. They're still in gain, and they're continuing to be in gain, as if Allah describing loss here and alluding to the opposite picture. Okay, and that would be those who are actually in gain. So those are kind of overarching ways of looking at this text. Then when we get to the ayah, we'll talk about this in more detail, but I want to mention this as part of our introductory discussion. It's the third observation that I want to make to you. That the first of them was that this is the minimum criteria, and that's the standard, it's the minimum criteria, and these three ways of looking at it. Now the third item is, it's either all four or nothing. Sorry, that's my phone. I think. That's my phone. We're in a masjid, you don't need the adhan. We're good. So it's all four criteria. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. All four or nothing at all. And part of that is actually, in some other places in the Quran, Allah doesn't mention these four. He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Like in Surah Al-Tin, He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. But there's no إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. It's not there. Some places in the Quran, Allah just mentions the ones who believe. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. He doesn't say الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So you have the most minimum expression, which is الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Then you have somewhat of an extended expression, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. They did good things. And the most elaborate expression, which is here, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That's the most elaborate expression. The way to think about that is, actually, you know how a seed contains the entire tree? Right? Sometimes you mention just the seed, which is what? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Sometimes you mention the seed and what it sprouts, which is الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And then you mention not just what it sprouts, but its main branches. What comes from the good deeds necessarily is وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So what Allah decided to do in this surah is kind of open Iman up. Like, what are the logical consequences of Iman? Which is why, because at the end of the day, it's only our Iman. Allah says on Judgment Day, the only thing that will benefit, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. No money, no children are going to benefit on that day except someone who comes before Allah with a sound heart. Now, what is in our heart? Is our deeds in our heart? Is tawasi bil-haqq and tawasi bil-sabr in our heart? No, what's in our heart? Iman. Iman is the only thing worth anything. But Allah has considered these items an extension of Iman itself. He's described them an extension of Iman itself. So none of us are confused. What does He mean by Iman in the real sense? That the seed could be dead and the seed could be alive. If the seed is alive, it's going to sprout these things. If the seed is dead, it'll remain just a seed. Then it's not even actually technically a seed anymore. It's just taking up space. It's dead space. Right? So we have to be clear, because of this surah, about what the implications are, why all four of these have to be taken into consideration. On that note, what I want to also share with you is the two distinctions that probably every Muslim should be very, very clear about, and we don't talk enough about it all. And that is that we have two very different ways of looking at where we stand. Where I stand as a Muslim, as far as you're concerned, is that so long as I said salam to you, I'm considered not just a Muslim, but a believer, like mu'minan. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ أَلْقَى إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ لَسْتَ مُؤْمِنًا. Don't say about somebody who even throws salam your way that you're not a believer. We owe each other what's called benefit of the doubt. Okay? Now let me give you an example. And I'm not going to get technical. I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible. We could be quoting names in fuqaha and muhaddithin, but we're going to skip that and just keep it simple as much as possible for the purpose of this discussion. Think of it this way: you have a man, Muslim man, who has two sons. One of them very religious, shows up to Fajr every morning at the masjid, prays every Isha at night at the masjid, observes his religion, stays away from the haram, good kid. And the other son, not quite. Prays, but not really, skips around, got a drinking problem, doing all kinds of bad stuff. Two sons of the same father, right? And that father passes away. Now it's time to distribute the inheritance. Should the better quality iman of one of his sons be considered a criteria by which he gets a little more in the share of inheritance and the bad kid gets less inheritance? As far as Allah's religion is concerned, he's Muslim and he's Muslim. And when their rights are being weighed, you don't weigh what's in their hearts. You don't weigh even their deeds. Because what's in their hearts and the weight of their deeds is going to be judged by who? By Allah. As far as the law of Islam is concerned, they're equal Muslims. They're Muslims. And as far as we're concerned, unless he's doing that stuff out in public, before the world, then we don't consider one better than the other. We don't. We don't know of, because the Messenger ﷺ would say that you cannot assume superiority of anyone over anyone else except by taqwa. Illa bit taqwa. And taqwa, he himself describes, at-taqwa hahuna, at-taqwa hahuna, at-taqwa hahuna. Taqwa is here. If it's here, that means you and I can see it. Nothing on the outside can tell you what is going on the inside. That only that person knows where they stand, and Allah knows where they stand, so we have to give benefit of the doubt. The way we see each other is we're all the same. We pray in the same row, we stand the same before Allah, nobody's better than anybody else. That's a fundamental teaching of Islam. You don't say the people that are more closer to Allah, the people with better iman, first row. And then lesser iman, second row. Let's make rows by beard sizes. We don't do that. So as long as you're Muslim, you're in the row. It doesn't matter what level of knowledge you have, what level of practice you have, it doesn't matter. We're all equal before Allah. But then there's going to be another kind of judgment of where do you actually stand. That cannot happen here. Where will it happen? Judgment Day. And it may be that I called you Muslim, you called me Muslim. I called you a believer, you called me a believer. I called you someone of faith, you called me someone of faith. And we're shocked on Judgment Day. Allah says, no, you're a loser. Well, how can a believer be a loser? No, we believe. We have iman. But there may be people, including ourselves, who stand before Allah on Judgment Day and we're in absolute shock. Why in the world am I being treated like this? No matter what that bad son does, at the end of the day, he's still a believer. As far as we're concerned. But that same person, that same young man, maybe if he goes before Allah, Allah says, no. I mean, you said it, but you didn't really mean it. You never really felt it. We don't know what he felt. It may be that he's judged entirely differently on Judgment Day. There are people on Judgment Day who all their life they thought they were Muslim, they were fine, and they come before Allah on Judgment Day, ضُرِبَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِسُورٍ لَهُ بَابٍ. A wall is dropped between them and the other believers. And they cry out, أَلَمْ نَكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. Weren't we with you? We're the same. قَالُوا بَلَا وَلَكِنَّكُمْ فَتَنْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ وَتَرَبَّصْتُمْ وَارْتَبْتُمْ وَغَرَّتْكُمُ الْأَمَانِيُّ حَتَّى جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ وَغَرَّكُمْ بِاللَّهِ الْغَرُورُ. No, you were with us, but you procrastinated. You didn't act when you were told to act. You just put stuff off. You kept doubting yourselves. And you kept doubting whether this is the right thing to do or not. You were always reluctant. And you were always deluded by false hopes. False criteria of success kept distracting you. And finally, until the decision of Allah came and the devil got to you. So you're on the wrong side of that wall. You're not going to get saved. This is the reality of Iman in the sense, what is before Allah. When the Quran talks about Iman, when the Quran talks about faith, much of the time, it's actually talking about how Allah will judge you. But not how Allah is giving you the right to judge anyone else. Really important to understand. Really, really important. How do we judge anyone else? What do we call them? Believer, Muslim, benefit of the doubt. They have taqwa, we don't know any better. That's how we judge everybody else. But Allah Azza wa Jal will say to the believers, He'll say, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, aminu billahi wa rasulihi. Those of you who believe. What? That's like saying, those of you who are sitting down, sit down. You could say, I'm already sitting down. Those of you who are standing, stand. No, those of you who are sitting, stand. I would imagine Allah saying, those of you who disbelieve, believe. Nope, those of you who believed, believe. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. Why? Those of you who see each other as believers, who've assumed that they believe, who give each other benefit of the doubt that they believe, who consider themselves the believing community. Now it's time to actually bring that faith in reality into your hearts, that nobody else will see except Allah. That's the iman, that's the faith that can be very high and it can be very low. That happens to you and me every day. There are parts of our day where our iman may be high, our faith in Allah, our fear of Allah, our love for Allah, our hope in Allah, our connection with Allah may be strong, and other parts other times it may be low. But we're standing in the same row. And somebody doesn't rise up in the air because their iman goes up. When Allah increases them in darajat, they're not hovering. They're hovering on the inside, but not on the outside. This surah, when it says, this is the minimal criteria of success. This is the minimal criteria of success. Or minimal criteria of not being a failure. This is not the same as the minimal criteria by which Muslims judge each other. You don't get to look at someone and say, well, according to Surah Al-Asr, you's a loser. Because iman, I don't know about that, look at you. Because if it was iman, you would have seen amilu salihat. And I have never heard you do tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr. So you're, As far as someone else is concerned, Quran's already told you, you don't get to say about anybody who threw salam your way that they are nothing short of a believer. They're a believer. That's it. Benefit of the doubt. Not that we don't give advice to each other, but we can't pass judgment on one another. These judgments are for ourselves. That's a really critical, really important distinction that we have to make. With Allah, our iman is actually directly related to our actions. Every one of them. Whether you guarded your eyes or not, iman got affected. Whether you fell into temptation and you earned something haram or not, it affected your iman. Whether you lied on your resume or not, it affected your iman. Every one of those things affect your iman. Even though to us it didn't affect your Islam, you still woke up a Muslim. Those are two very distinct things. When Allah here says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, don't think of those who were Muslim. No, this is not talking about iman on the outside that we judge for each other. This is going to be the iman that happens on the inside. That's the one that even if on the outside everybody else believes that we have, we still may not have. And the flip is also true. Nobody else thinks you have it, but you may have it. I'll say that again. There are people who underestimate you and say, what kind of iman do you have? You believe, seriously? This is what you call faith? And they undermine what you, or how you believe. And Allah knows what you believe. So you don't get people to overvalue your faith, and you don't get people to undervalue your faith. That's between you and Allah Azza wa Jalla, okay? And the final observation, before I get to, inshallah ta'ala, start the surah, is that the style of the surah has exhausted virtually every device for emphasizing the point. Allah Azza wa Jalla uses the oath in the beginning, which if we get time today, we'll talk about today, but if not, we'll talk about it tomorrow, inshallah. But the oath, like when you say, I swear, and I swear by anything before you speak, then you've already used a style that is not normal speech. You don't use, other than the Arab culture, which was wallahi and billahi, and these were used kind of commonly. Like, wallahi, I'm hungry, man, I gotta get some ice cream or something. Like, they just kind of used it. And Allah said, لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. Allah is not going to hold you to account because you keep throwing oaths out casually, right? That you just say them without really meaning like something serious. But if you did use Allah's name and you meant it, then you'll be held to account. وَلَكِنْ يُؤَاخِذُكُمْ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ. But in normal speech, when someone of importance speaks, and they take an oath, not just friends among each other, when someone of importance speaks and they take an oath, I swear by whatever they say, then that is not normal speech. Hey, cute kids, two of you. Hey, you two. You're really cute. Okay? Say okay. Say okay. You're not going to say okay? Okay, you're still cute. Okay, I'm not mad. Just because I'm distracted because you're super cute. Okay. What was I saying? Something about Islam? Was? The oath. Allah Azza wa Jal, when He swears by time, it actually implies several things. And we're going to go through those implications. What does it mean that Allah has taken an oath? But at the very least know that this is a way of, this is not a normal thing to do. You don't normally say something like that. So take an oath before you speak. The oath is just there almost to say, listen up. This is serious. That's what that is. That's wal asr. Wal asr should come with like 10 exclamation marks after it in your mind. It should be bold, capital. Like, what? And even what he took an oath by, asr, which I'll get into today. The word itself that he used, it's a profound word. It's a really interesting word of the Arabic language. You know, a unique word used for time. Actually, the typical standard word for time is zaman, waqt, dahr. These are the typical words for time. You know, or heen, or an. These are words for time. But asr is a unique word for time. It's not a common word for time. And Allah used that word, and we'll see why. Then the statement that comes after, innal insana lafi khusr, Allah used the nominal, the noun form, which is the strongest way of communicating a sentence. There's other ways. Laqad khasira al-insan. The human being is lost. We could have said that too. There are other verbal ways of saying it that would have been emphatic, but not nearly as emphatic. But Allah Azza wa Jal chose the Jumla Ismiya form. And even the Jumla Ismiya, this nominal sentence structure, wasn't enough. Al-insanu fi khusr. Aw al-insanu khasirun. The human being is a loser. Done, the point is made. Nope. Inna al-insan. Inna is what's used in Arabic, not just as a device to respond to an oath, but also li-izalati shak. Don't have any doubt about what I'm about to say, as if Allah is acknowledging that what He's about to say, people will have a hard time believing. Like they're going to hear it, but they're not really going to internalize it. How am I in loss? What loss? I'm doing fine. I'm okay. So He puts inna there. Then He could have said inna nas. People. Inna nas lafi khusr. Like qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. Right? Hada bayanun lin nas. But here He says innal insana lafi khusr. What's the difference between nas and insan? Nas is people. When you collectively talk to people and say, like if I tell my class, you guys are in trouble. The whole class. I say, you guys are in trouble. You know what? Some students are like, I know it's like 3 people that are in trouble. He's like yelling at everybody. I'm okay. I did my homework. You're not going to think it's about you. It's called the diffusion of responsibility. You know? Or maybe the 2 people I made eye contact with, they're like, oh, I think he means me. But everybody else is like, he can't even see me. I'm behind the person with the biggest head. So I'm fine. You know, strategic seating in the classroom. Right? When Allah says, people are in loss, and you're like, yeah, I know some people, they're messed up. But you don't think of who? Yourself. You deflect to somebody else. But when He says, al-insan, each and every human, this is lam of istighraq, the human being, whoever the human being may be, every single last one of them, then He made no exception. Every last one of you is going to fail. I say that to students. Every single one of you has failed. I was doing fine. What? Me? Why? It's meant to send shockwaves. Innal insan. Then even inside the word insan, there's a criticism. Because the word insan it's different from bashar. Innal bashar lafi khusr. Inna ibna Adam lafi khusr. He chose al-insan. Al-insan is argued to be from 2 origins, uns and nisyan. Uns means human beings are people of compassion. They express love and they want to feel loved. We're softies, basically. What that means is we're softies. Okay? And ins is the opposite of wahsh. Wahsh means animals that have no compassion. They kill. Like lions, I learned this when I was in South Africa. When lions have cubs and they get old enough, the father lion fights the younger lion to the death sometimes. And if not to the death, they injure one or the other enough because there can be only one head. And the one who loses has to start his own tribe somewhere else or live subserviently. And every now and then, the one who lost, whether it was the father or the son, and usually the father tries to have that fight sooner because the kid's still not that old, so he put him in line. But if once he puts him down, the father will just come around and just claw him on the face and fight him, and then the lion will just go, just humble himself. That's wahsh. He says, just so you know who's boss. I saw that happen myself. This lion just came, just wrecked this other guy, and he put up a fight for a couple of seconds, and then he was in sujood. And he was down, okay, dad, okay. You're still doing one day though. You know? That's wahsh. They're not softies. Snakes are not like, how are you feeling? No. They don't have that. We are that. We are emotional creatures. Birds are not like torn up about the worm that some other bird took the other day, and they're like, I keep remembering that, and no, that doesn't happen. With us, somebody took my pen and never gave it back, and I just really miss that pen. And we're sentimental creatures. We're emotional creatures. And Allah Azza wa Jal, when He describes our loss, then Allah Azza wa Jal is actually appealing to the emotional side of the human being too, by use of the word insan, from the uns side. But the other is nisyan. I'm going to tell you you're in loss, but the way you are, you're going to what? You're going to forget. You're going to forget. Human beings have two kinds of memory. Basically, I'm not giving you a psychological analysis, it's from a spiritual point of view, two kinds of memory. One kind of memory is ilm, it doesn't go away. Like 2 + 2 is 4. If I woke you up at 2 in the morning and said, what's 2 + 2? Why'd you wake me up? It's 4, God. You will never forget. Because that's just knowledge that you have. But then there is, the memory of our hearts. Like for example, you have to study for an exam. The exam is tomorrow. Right? But you're like, yeah, I know it's tomorrow, but I just need to clear my mind. So I'm going to just play some Street Fighter to clear my mind. And 5 hours go by and your friend comes, there's an exam tomorrow. He goes, oh my God, I forgot. Why? Because some things that call us to responsibility, some things that compel us to change, uncomfortable truths, consciously or subconsciously, we would rather what? Forget. We'd rather forget. We don't like dealing with it. It takes a special kind of grit to deal with uncomfortable truths and not put them aside. Every time a stressful conversation happens, I'm sleepy. Can we talk about this later? Just put it aside. This is part of the criticism inside the word al-insan. He could have said, he's a loser, khasir. But he says, or khasira, the verb could have been used, even if it's a jumla ismiya. Inna al-insan khasir. Inna al-insan yakhsar. No. Inna al-insan, even the jumla, the ism fa'il version, la khasir. Nope. La fi khusr. Is drowning in loss. And even the fi is not enough. There's a lam on the fi, which is not required, which is another on top of the inna. Yet another jawab of qasam. It's as if it's an oath by itself. Some ulama consider the lam a device of qasam on its own, like la'umruk. كأنه أقسم مرتين. والعصر أقسم. لا في خسر أقسم ثانية. Subhanallah. I swear he's in loss. I swear by time, no doubt the human being, I swear he's in loss. I swear again. There again. Subhanallah. It's not just adat jawab al-qasam, it can have a qasam embedded in it, an oath embedded in it. And then to describe fi khusr. You could be on the road to loss. You could be headed towards loss. You could be a loser eventually if you don't change your ways. It's much more gloomy to say what? You're already in it. You're already in it. Watch out for the flood. You're heading towards the flood. You're in the flood. You're already in the drowning. And then finally, the masadir, the infinitive verbs, like loss, or infinitive nouns, the loss that's been used, the word that's been used, is in fact commonly used with the al on it. In the Arabic language, we don't just say ilmun, we say al-ilm. And when you put al on something, in English, you don't translate it with a the, you often translate it without any, suffix, or prefix rather. So you say, human beings are in loss, al-insanu fil khusr. Fil khusr. But he didn't say fil al-khusr. He said fi khusrin. Khusrin. And that's ta'meem of khusr. All kinds of loss. One of the implications of it. All kinds of loss. Tanween grammatically can also be argued for tafkhim. Grand loss. Any degree of loss. Some loss at some point or another, always in loss of some kind. And that loss is not always the same. And that's kept, the openness of it is kept with the tanween of it. There were other ways of saying إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. You could just say الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ لَيْسُوا خَاسِرِينَ. Those who believe, do good deeds, and join others to the truth and perseverance are not losers. Could have said that. Now we know they're not losers, everybody else is. Nope. No. That would be positive. They're good. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the overwhelming loss of humanity first. And then by using illa, the adat al-istithna, except, by doing so He made us feel like those people are exceptional people. Exceptions are always the majority or minority in anything. If they were the majority, then the other part would be the exception. You understand? By saying illa, Allah is already saying, this ma haula illa qalil. These are very, very, very few people. And it makes me feel like, are they really that few? Can I be among them? I don't know, because I would have a sense of relief. He said, believers are not losers. Because I was like, I'm a believer, yeah, I'm cool. Probably am. But when He put it as an exception, then He made us kind of feel like you have to be exceptional to be part of it. That's not just something normal you get to be a part of. What you are already is insan. But what you're not is an exception. You better really look at yourself, and I better really look at myself and see if we can become an exception. Notice also this surah, some have done itlaq of the word insan. When we get to that ayah, we'll see that in more depth. Mufassirun have said al-insan here means the kafir, disbeliever. The disbeliever is in loss, the believers are not in loss. But if Allah intends to say disbeliever, He says what? Disbeliever. He's the one who taught us al-bayan, allamahu al-bayan. He says what He means. We don't have to replace a word He says with another. It may imply that too, but when He said al-insan, doesn't that make every human being conscious? And isn't the fact that every sahabi, every time they meet another sahabi, both believers, are reciting to each other, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, not so they can remind each other that disbelievers are losers, but they're reminding each other, we better not become losers, isn't it? So they in their minds, that practice of the companions itself is an illustration that they saw this as a universal truth, not something that applies only to disbelievers. The last thing that I want to share with you today is, inshallah ta'ala, just a discussion about the linguistic meaning of al-asr. We're not going to get into the ayah al-asr, but just the embedded Arabic meanings of the word al-asr. I thought this was really beautiful, and I thought I should dedicate time to share that with you. By the end of this, your brain will probably be fried, so I'll leave the rest for tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. The word asr comes from the verb asara, and it's literally used for juicing. عصر العنب ونحوه مما له دهن أو شراب أو عسل. It's first of all used for juicing or extracting fluid, squeezing something out, anything that gives out oil, like olives, or drink, like oranges or grapes or whatever else, or even the extraction of honey. استخرج ما فيه عصير, or استخرج ما فيه, to extract whatever's in it little by little. It's not done, like drenched it out, but actually drips coming out. So عصير الشيء وعصارته ما تحلب منه إذا عصرته. Asir of something is what you were able to milk out of something. It's actually literally used at milking and squeezing out of something, and it's coming out in drips. إذا عصرته والعواصر ثلاثة أحجار يعصرون العنب بها يجعلون بعضها فوق بعض. They used to use the word عصارة or awasir for rocks that they used to smash grapes on, to squeeze grapes on, to make the juice. And then at the bottom of it, the juice starts dripping out. They had this weird device of 3 rocks, and they would squeeze them, and then the juice would come out little by little. And they used to call those rocks awasir. That was the word they used for it. والاعتصار بالماء أن يغص بالطعام فيعتصر بالماء يشربه قليلا قليلا ليسيغه. i'tisar of water means that you were eating something and you started choking on it, or you started getting like something got stuck over here and you feel like it's not going down. And you don't drink too much water, you drink little by little so you can ease it down. That's actually called i'tisar bil ma, to let little by little water go down. So one of the first meaning is to squeeze and to extract fluid, which is why the same verb is used in the Quran, a'siru khamra. The dream of one of the people that was the inmate in Yusuf alayhi salam's story, I squeeze wine, a'siru khamra. Okay. Then the second meaning of the same root, al-i'saru riyahun shadida تهب من الأرض وتثير الغبار اللاصق بالأرض بضغطها البالغ الشدة وتقتلعه فيرتفع كالعمود إلى السماء. It's actually also used for very strong winds that twirl and eventually look like pillars in the sky. What is it describing? Tornadoes. Tornadoes. It's not just something squeezing, something being squeezed, but it's also something that is held together and something very powerful that can't be stopped. The idea of i'sar is something powerful that cannot be stopped. And it's interesting that it's alluding to something that wherever it passes by, what does it do? It destroys. It destroys. Time, as it passes by, destroys your youth. Time is very powerful, it cannot be stopped. It will squeeze the life out of you. It will squeeze the life out of your car, out of your computer, out of your phone. It'll squeeze the life out of your house. It'll squeeze durability out of everything. Things that were the most powerful can become the most weak. And the only tornado that ripped through them was what? It was Asr. And that's the idea of its power and how nothing can stand in its way. من لطف ما في الأثناء أي مختزن في الثمر خفي مع سيلانه شيئا فشيئا فيوحي بالاستئمار عبر بالعصر عن الدهر لاستمراره هكذا كما عبر به بعد الزوال إلى احمرار الشمس. So let's talk about that. It's also interesting that the word is used to describe always something that is hidden inside something. In other words, juice is inside the fruit, right? And the tornado is carrying the dirt that is inside of the wind. It's on the inside, and it's being squeezed from within. It's also used, so this idea of something being squeezed and something being held together, or held tightly as it's dripping out, like a slow death almost, right? It's also used for بعد الزوال إلى إحمرار الشمس. It's after the sun starts going down a little bit until the sun starts turning red. That time is also called Al-Asr, like the prayer of Al-Asr, right? But why do they call it that? لأن هذا الوقت نتيجة وامتداد لبلوغ الشمس أقصى شدتها في فترة الصبح إلى الظهيرة ثم إن الشمس تبدو أو تظل هذه الفترة في انحدار كأنها تدفع أو تغضط حتى تغرب أو حتى تغرب. It is as though when the sun is up, like in the morning, it's really intense, powerful. And as it goes down, it's as though it's being pushed down and weakened, and its light is being dripped out of it, and it's not as strong as it used to be. And that's why as it's being squeezed down into the ground, it's being called Asr time. That's the idea of Asr. Even the sun is being smushed down as the image of it losing its light, you know. فإن زمن العصر يوصف بأنه ضيق فهو زمن معصور. It's also attributed this way because it's a very limited amount of time. The time of Asr, the light of the sun starts changing, but it's almost unnoticeable before it's too late. Like some of us, we're like, okay, we're driving, and it's like the sun is starting to turn orange. I was like, I can make it home by Asr, right? There's the light, and you're like, look at the sun. Yeah, there's the light, and you keep going, and by the time you get home, what happens? Maghrib. Like it goes way too fast, and it looked like the sun was right there. I had time. But then it just disappears, and it drips out, and before you know it, it's run out. So the idea of time being very limited, or a very short window before it runs away. This is why actually al-mu'sar was used, al-jariyatu awwal ma adrakat wa hadat wa qarabat al-hayd. For a young girl that's about to be in her period for the first time, she's also called a mu'sar, because her time is limited. It could happen at any time. And that's when she's called, literally her body is going to be squeezed. And so that's how they would describe her with the word mu'sar. The word mu'sir من السحب التي تتحلب بالمطر لما تجتمع وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا. The clouds are called mu'sir. Quran in Surah Al-Naba will call them mu'sirat. Why? Because when they are squeezed together and then they start dripping, what do they start dripping? The rain. The clouds that drip rain, like the fruit when it's squeezed and it drips juice, is called mu'sir. Mu'sir. So that's وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ. This is the final one is the most fascinating to me. وَمِنَ الْإِحَاطَةِ بِشِدَادٍ بَالِغَةٍ أو بالغة الصلابة العصر بالفتح الحبس والمنع. Al-Asr in Arabic usage was also used for arresting something, caging something, preventing something from moving, holding something and not letting it go. وَبِالتَّحْرِيكِ وَالضَّمْ الْمَلْجَأ وَالْمَنْجَاتِ. And by the way, what does that mean? That means that we are surrounded by time and we can't escape it. It's got a hold on us and it's squeezing us, not just itself. It's squeezing us and we can't let go. It's dripping on us. It's actually pulling life out of us little by little by little, and we can't let go. It's actually really interesting that the word asr corresponds very nicely with the word khusr. Because if the fruit or ourselves are being squeezed and we are losing, what's the word for losing? Khusr. Right? Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr. So there's a literary correlation between asr and khusr as well. وَبِالتَّحْرِيكِ وَالضَّمْ الْمَلْجَأ وَالْمَنْجَاتِ. But it has a positive meaning too. When you say asar with a fatha, or asur also, it actually means a place where you can find refuge. Some place where you can feel protected. الَّذِي يَلْجَأُ إِلَيْهِ الْخَائِفُ فَيُحِيطُ بِهِ بِقُوَّةٍ وَتَحُولُ مَعْنَى الْإِحَاطَةِ ضَغْطًا إِلَى الْإِحَاطَةِ حِمَايَةً. Actually means when something is holding you tight. I can maybe give you an image so you'll understand. They use the word asar for, imagine there's like a windstorm, and there's a sandstorm, and somebody wants to find protection. A child wants to find protection, and the father grabs the child and hovers and squeezes the child so the child doesn't feel anything. And he squeezed him. He's done asar of him, actually, in order to what? Protect him. So it actually has a positive meaning too. In other words, that very thing that's squeezing you is also doing what? Protecting you. The greatest liability you and I have is time. And the greatest protection we have against our own loss is also the right use of time. It's the very thing that protects us. It's the very thing that can be our destruction. Look at even how, all of our, and I've mentioned this in previous lectures, but just cursory reference, all of our worship, all of our primary modes of worship go back to some respect for time. Some taking advantage of precise times. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Ramadan, Hajj, Eid. Every major ritual goes back to some taking advantage of some particular time. That same time that we're losing in life, Allah gave us opportunities to make gains. Right? Take advantage of this night. Take advantage of this season. Do these and these azkar at this time. So Allah Azza wa Jalla will say, وَقُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ إِنَّا قُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ كَانَ مَشْهُودًا وَالْمُسْتَغْفِرِينَ بِالْأَسْحَارِ. Quran of Fajr is going to be something that will be witnessed, meaning witnessed by all of the angels, witnessed by Allah. And on the other hand, he'll also say those who make istighfar, but he didn't just say make istighfar, he said make istighfar in the morning time. That's a really interesting thing, by the way. Make istighfar in the morning time. You should make istighfar after you've sinned, right? You just woke up. You didn't sin yet. I would imagine, make istighfar when? At night time. You've done a whole day's worth of, debit, and now at the end, put some credit in, put some istighfar in. But Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, وَالْمُسْتَغْفِرِينَ بِالْأَسْحَارِ. As if you are acknowledging before Allah, no matter how hard I try, I will probably end up making mistakes. And before I even make them, I seek your forgiveness. You acknowledge your humility before Allah in the morning. You don't, لا تزكوا أنفسكم هو أعلم بمن اتقى. Somebody prays Fajr. Today was a good day. I was a pretty iman. If I die today, I'm good. No, homie, you make istighfar in the morning, because you and I aren't safe just because we had a good start. We seek Allah's forgiveness from the very, very beginning, meaning our default state. It's not, you don't seek Allah's forgiveness when you've messed up. You seek Allah's forgiveness always. It's not, well, I haven't done anything, why should I make istighfar? No. Istighfar is all the time. Okay, but I wanted to kind of give you the overall picture of time, the word Allah used for it in this surah, time that's dripping, drop by drop by drop, time that cannot be stopped, no matter what you do, like a what? Like a tornado. Time that will destroy everything in its path, there's nothing you can do about it. Time that will squeeze you, and time that will also protect you. And he's swearing by that element of time, and then he's going to make his statement. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll get to that in our next session. I'll conclude here, bi'idhnillah, because I've, instead of giving you a break and then doing a longer session, I'm thinking inshallah we just go run through, bi'idhnillah. And I think much of the introductory discussions are done so we can get into the surah itself. I don't know if I'll finish tomorrow, but I'm certainly going to try. I won't rush though. That's one thing I won't do. So if I don't get to finish, then maybe another time we'll set up and finish up the surah. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayat wa dhikr al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.